tools that don't even support maybe iOS. And so what about integration, as Carlo and Brian mentioned? Have you already made that investment in HP's Quality Center or IBM's RQM? And is that important that your automation tool interact with those investments that have already been made? From a performance perspective, is performance something important to you? And if so, you need to choose a tool that can begin to run those performance metrics. And then lastly, and it's really important for us at Cognizant, because we run an onshore-offshore model for most of our clients, and that is this sharing and collaboration. Our testers, our testers at Cognizant have the ability to log in a cloud environment and run tests in an automated fashion in Phoenix, in our labs in Phoenix, or on-site at USAA, or at an on-site customer premise. At the same time, testers on-site of USAA can run tests in Phoenix or anywhere else. And so you really have this ability to collaborate and share automation capabilities around the world with that across different time zones. So a great means of flexibility in terms of automation.
And then from an economics perspective?
From an economics perspective, absolutely. So obviously there's costs associated with automation. There is costs incurred for the tools. There's costs incurred to develop the scripts. Somebody has to develop the scripts. There's costs incurred to manage those scripts, to place those in QC, to manage them, to version them, to ensure that they're still relevant in regression. And so all of these costs, right, have to have some type of a return on investment. And I get this question a lot is, okay, you've sold me on automation, I get it, but there's costs associated. Tell me what the return, tell me when I can make a return on these investments. And so we go through this modeling exercise where we look at all of their test case, we look at their environment, we look at their device selection strategy, we look at their integration into the different ALMs, and we model it out, and we determine, hey, you know, in this particular case, and this is just for illustrative purposes only, that at the fifth release of your sprint, your fifth sprint release of your development cycle, you will be able to break even. You will be able to cover all your costs in terms of what it takes to automate, and then going forward, obviously, you will be able to see a cost savings that I have on the right, where you are covering the cost of what would have been manual testing. You would have faster test cycles, and obviously quicker release cycles and quicker go-to-market.
And so therefore, as it comes down to the local organization, the requirements kind of dictate the math in terms of how this works. Yep. Completely.
That's right.
Moving into the last segment here, in terms of trying to wrap up and kind of keep these in mind, in terms of there's challenges and then what are the solutions on the marketplace that Clay just mentioned, and most importantly, where is the business value? And so from my perspective, I want to try to start in terms of not what the challenges are, but where is the value? And so from an organization's perspective, there are a few things that I find that frequently come up. You know, one of for me, one of the more comical ones, but which is an absolute driver for many organizations, is when the CEO or a key figure in the leadership team has an experience on that device. All of a sudden, that trend, that elevates the quality conversation immediately in terms of why is this happening? Why is this not available when I needed it? And that triggers a downward pressure into the organization to improve. The other dynamic from a value perspective is exactly what Clay was just saying with regards to time to market. The transition and the pressure that ensues with trying to increasing the number of sprints or releases to market is intensifying. And what I always try to unpack that a little bit, if an organization is moving from 4 releases to the market in a year to somewhere between 6 and 12 releases, that's typically at least 2 to 3 test cycles per release to the marketplace. So all of a sudden, the number of test cycles begins to grow. And from there, that's the pressure. How do I squeeze out time from what I'm doing right now, while at the same time improving the test integrity, test reliability of my results? Then there's also this issue in terms of, if the clock speed or the frequency of my release to test is increasing, how do I start trying to understand what the end user experience is going to be from an optimization perspective? How do you go about that? So Brian mentioned the statistics earlier that the threshold right now for the average mobile user is in that 2 to 3 second time frame. If I'm not getting a refresh or that transaction completing, I'm beginning to have concerns. And you know, one of the things that's clear from a web perspective, it used to be that up to 10 seconds was acceptable. If it's 2 to 3 seconds, that's acceptable for mobile. How do you understand where the big consumers are in the entire process? And the entire process you very much have to extend what I would call the traditional thinking of, okay, is it my back end or is it the network? Well, now you have to also factor in, what's the contribution of the device itself? In terms of, most applications have actually quite a bit of device-side logic contributing to that round trip to complete a transaction. And being able to troubleshoot through all of the layers of the value chain, the delivery chain, is important. And as you do that, that's when you start backing up. Hold it, this is now what I'm prioritizing as key to me. How am I going to get there? How am I going to get there in terms of being able to understand what are the solutions on the marketplace available to me? What are the different attributes that they bring to the table for me to realize the value that I'm looking for? And that's the conversation. Being able to first understand what's most critical, and then understanding how do I get there from here. And I think to wrap it up is kind of where we started. There's a clear transition for organizations as they start and progress through this journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. In fact, we're starting to see more and more organizations no longer pat the QA organizations on the back and say, hey, good job, you did really good on that one particular application, great job, well done. You know, your work is done now, and you'll move on to the next application. Actually, we're seeing a pull of centralization of QA, and we're really seeing this start in this mobile application domain, to where a QA organization really can't just look at that one particular application's quality anymore. They've got to look at it from a lot of different applications that might be running. If you can imagine a banking and insurance organization has banking and insurance, has multiple applications. Even a banking company alone might have multiple applications to their consumers, to their retail stores, to their brokerage accounts and things like this. And so we're really starting to see a siloed mobile QA evolve into a dedicated mobile QA, or what we call a center of excellence. And you probably have seen this, or your organizations might already be going through this transformation. But really what happens in this stepwise approach is that the processes become standardized, the templates and all of the assets that are required to do this QA are standardized so that communication can be made on a cross-functional basis, because you might have different application development organizations developing for different functions of the business, which ultimately, if you can standardize these processes, it will move you towards this process improvement, reducing costs, creating some efficiencies there. It will ultimately get you to a point of centralization to where you can begin to manage common governance, manage risk and compliance, to where this one particular organization, this QA organization, becomes this central focus point for all mobile application certifications, and not just kind of this siloed approach. So in the end game, you have not a reactive siloed mobile QA, but you have a proactive, dedicated mobile QA center of excellence that's managing mobile application certification across the entire organization.
Thank you. We've covered quite a bit of ground in terms of the device selection problem, in terms of the driving an ROI and understanding where the different value drivers are coming from, and now also thinking about how do I sustain and improve and grow over time. As we've shared this information, I saw several people jotting down notes and things. So what we want to do right now is transition really into a Q&A period, where I'll invite Brian back up, as well as Brett, to come in and try to answer as best we can the questions that you have, and hopefully there'll be members of the audience who will be able to contribute their perspectives as well. So as we kind of move up here, happy to start and take any questions that you might